General Hospital spoilers tease that the history viewers thought they knew is about to be rewritten, and everything surrounding the life and alleged death of Britt Westbourne is about to unravel in shocking detail. Somewhere along the glistening shores of Dubrovnik, Croatia, the truth awaits, hidden behind a maze of betrayal, stolen identities, and the calculated manipulations of a woman who's been pulling strings for decades. The sun over the Adriatic does little to mask the cold confrontation that brews as Jason Morgan finally finds the woman he once believed lost forever. She stands before him not as a ghost, but as flesh and blood, haunted, changed, but alive. Jason had followed breadcrumbs through Eastern Europe for weeks, tipped off by whispers from old allies and encrypted messages that only someone who knew Britt's digital signature would recognize. He hadn't expected to find her in a quiet coastal town, tucked away in a villa registered under a name no one would think to question except him. Britt doesn't seem surprised when he appears at her doorstep. If anything, she seems ready. The reunion is not tender. There is relief, certainly, but it's overshadowed by the tension of too many questions and far too many lies. Jason demands answers. Why did she fake her death? Why disappear when people who loved her were grieving? Britt doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she pours 2 glasses of rakiya and leads him to a quiet room overlooking the water. Only then does she speak, and what she reveals shatters everything he thought he knew, not just about Britt, but about the town they left behind. Britt confesses that her death was orchestrated not by choice, but by design. She had been forced into hiding, her death faked with the precision and cruelty only one woman could mastermind, Liesl. Liesl, the woman Britt believed to be her mother, had not only forged the documents that certified Britt's terminal illness, but had also ensured the world believed she had succumbed to it. In reality, Britt had been drugged, transported, and awakened in an underground facility where she was told in no uncertain terms that her life was no longer her own. Liesl had been behind it all. Not just the staged death, but the illness itself. The symptoms Britt once thought were part of a degenerative condition had been chemically induced, controlled, and weaponized to manipulate her. Every moment she spent preparing for her death was monitored, rehearsed, and executed under Liesl's command. But it wasn't just about control. It was about silence. And then Britt tells Jason the unthinkable. She is not Liesl daughter. The story about Liesl giving birth to Britt while in captivity, raising her in secret, nurturing her while carrying the weight of past sins, it was all a lie. The truth, long buried beneath layers of deception, is that Britt is Nina Reeves' biological daughter. The same Nina who had spent years believing she had been robbed of one daughter, only to recently discover another, Willow. But Britt says even that revelation was a setup. According to Britt, Liesl had stolen her, Nina's first daughter, while Nina was unconscious during childbirth. It had not been a single child born that night, but twins. Nellie had been one, taken and raised elsewhere. Britt was the other, spirited away by Liesl under the guise of protection, only to be used as a pawn in a plan stretching decades into the future. Liesl had spun a careful web around Nina, making her believe her daughter had died, and then orchestrated the reveal of Willow as a way to mislead and emotionally manipulate everyone involved. It was all part of something bigger. Something older. Britt believes Liesl wasn't working alone. She speaks of hints, clues she's gathered over the years. Encrypted communications, unexplained alliances, and quiet cover-ups that go back decades. There were people in Port Charles who helped Liesl maintain this illusion. Trusted figures. People no one would suspect. Britt suspects Sonny Corinthos may have known. Carly, perhaps. Maybe even Monica Quartermain. The betrayal is so vast that it's impossible to know where it ends. Britt leans forward and tells Jason that this was never just about one stolen child. It was about constructing a false narrative that controlled not just lives, but power, inheritance, and influence across Port Charles. Liesl had spent years positioning herself as eccentric but ultimately harmless. In reality, she had become one of the most powerful architects of misinformation the town had ever seen. Britt hasn't revealed this to anyone else. Not even Nina. She wants proof. Irrefutable, tangible proof. She knows Liesl had accomplices, midwives, doctors, handlers. Some are dead. Some have disappeared. but a few are still out there. She's tracked them to Europe and the States, and she needs Jason's help to find the last one, a geneticist who falsified Britt's medical records and helped create the story of her so-called disease. Britt believes this person holds DNA evidence and a hidden medical file that will destroy the lies once and for all. Jason, still reeling, agrees to help. But he warns her, once the secret gets out, it won't just destroy Liesl. It will tear apart Nina. It will rewrite family dynamics, rip open old wounds, and ignite old rivalries. Britt nods. She understands. But she's not looking for vengeance. She's looking for truth. For her identity. For justice, not just for herself, but for the decades she spent living a lie. What makes it more complicated is Britt's ongoing silence about Willow. As far as the town knows, Willow is Nina's long-lost daughter. The connection, the heartbreak, the tentative healing, it's all built on a foundation of deception. Britt doesn't want to be the one to take that from them. Not yet. She's not ready to upend two lives unless she's certain. But Jason sees the conflict in her. He knows Britt isn't just waiting. She's hurting. She's scared that reclaiming her identity will mean losing any chance of belonging in the only world she's ever known. Back in Port Charles, Liesl remains untouchable. She plays the grieving aunt, the supportive great-aunt to Wiley, and the benevolent figure at the hospital. No one suspects she's at the heart of an unraveling conspiracy. She has covered her tracks well. Her public records are clean. Her allies speak on her behalf. She has even begun subtly turning Nina against Willow, planting seeds of doubt about her loyalty, her parenting, her place in the family. It's strategic. She's preparing for the inevitable moment when Britt returns. Meanwhile, Nina finds herself struggling with conflicting emotions. She feels a growing sense of unease. Her connection with Willow has been fragile at best, and lately, it feels like something is missing. There are times when Nina stares at Willow and sees nothing familiar. No sense of maternal instinct. No recognition. It's a feeling she brushes aside as trauma, but it lingers. When Ava mentions a vague comment Liesl once made about secrets beyond blood, Nina begins to wonder if her aunt hasn't been entirely honest. The clues are there. The puzzle pieces are beginning to shift. And soon, the truth will be undeniable. Far away in Croatia, Britt and Jason prepare to return home. She has contacted the geneticist under a false name and arranged a meeting in Berlin. Jason insists they move quickly. If Liesl catches wind of their pursuit, she will strike first. Britt agrees, but not before leaving behind one encrypted message, stored on a secure drive, a video message intended for Nina. In it, she introduces herself not as Britt Westbourne, but as someone else entirely. She tells her mother the truth, in case she doesn't survive what's coming. She closes the video with a whisper, "I am yours. I always was. And I'm coming home." Jason and Britt arrived in Berlin under heavy caution, each movement calculated, each contact vetted and revetted. The city's cold gray skies matched the atmosphere of tension that lingered between them. The geneticist they were set to meet, Dr. Malek Rudin, had gone underground years ago after his name surfaced in controversial bioethics scandals involving infant identity records. Britt tracked him through encrypted hospital data leaks in Zurich and confirmed his involvement with the forged files Liesl once had access to. Dr. Rudin knew the truth about Britt's lineage. More importantly, he was rumored to have saved a set of unaltered DNA results, ones Liesl had ordered destroyed decades ago. They found Rudin holed up in a rundown medical research facility masquerading as a sleep clinic. He was gaunt, paranoid, and aging poorly, but his mind was sharp. He recognized Britt instantly and reacted with a mixture of fear and pity. In hushed tones, he confirmed everything she suspected. Liesl had paid him to reassign maternal identity markers, falsify paternity test results, and build a false medical profile that aligned with a fictional disease, one he had helped design. But the key revelation came when Rudin provided a hidden drive containing the original DNA data. Britt had no reason left to doubt. She was Nina's daughter by blood. Willow had been a decoy from the beginning. And Liesl had known it all. Jason watched her take it in, her face motionless, but her breathing unsteady. He knew the weight she carried now wasn't just about family. It was about legacy. About being a woman who had spent her life shaping her identity from broken truths and stolen pieces. They left Berlin with the evidence, but also with a growing sense that exposing this truth would be neither simple nor safe. Back in Port Charles, tension was mounting. Nina had begun to question her past in deeper, more desperate ways. She secretly contacted a genealogist to verify her records again, uncertain what she was looking for, but driven by an inexplicable pull. Willow, meanwhile, continued to sense Nina's increasing detachment. Their already fragile relationship was unraveling further, and Willow blamed herself, believing that her recent shift in priorities, focusing more on her children and career, had alienated Nina. What neither of them could imagine was that the rift was based not in emotion, but in biology. The blood connection they thought they shared was nothing more than a carefully planted lie. Liesl, always calculating, sensed the danger growing. Britt's re-emergence in Europe was not entirely invisible to her. Through an old associate still loyal to the cause, she received word that Jason and Britt had met with Rudin. Panic was not Liesl's style, but precision was. She quietly reached out to two long-dormant allies in Port Charles. One worked within the Corinthos organization, a man whose loyalties had been forged not to Sonny, but to an older version of power, one Liesl had helped build during the era of silent control and whispered names. The other was deeply embedded in the hospital's administration, someone who owed their career to a forged identity and decades of silence. Liesl knew she had little time. She began moving assets, paper trails, identities, backup documentation, everything that could disprove Britt's new claim. Her goal wasn't to kill Britt. It was to discredit her, to portray her return as the breakdown of a woman consumed by trauma and delusion. Liesl prepared medical reports, hired two former intelligence officers to leak false psychiatric evaluations, and orchestrated anonymous tip-offs to the press. When Britt returned to Port Charles, Liesl would ensure she looked not like a daughter reclaiming the truth, but a patient unraveling into conspiracy. But Britt wasn't coming back alone. Jason had contacted Danny, instructing him to quietly begin shifting certain digital infrastructures at the hospital and within the police department. Danny, long underestimated by most in Port Charles, had grown into a skilled tactician. He understood systems and vulnerabilities, and he knew how to operate without detection. With Dante distracted by his own battle to win back Rocco's trust, Danny used the opening to reroute server access and dig deeper into hospital archives, where he found decades-old encrypted files. Some of them were corrupted beyond repair, but others hinted at a deeper level of orchestration. Not just Britt. Not just Willow. But perhaps other children as well, infants reassigned, parents separated, lives rewritten. Danny confronted Dante in a parking garage one night, furious and unable to hide his rage. "You wanted to play cop? Then investigate this," he said, tossing a flash drive at Dante's feet. Dante didn't react immediately, but he took the drive. Later, reviewing the files alone in his apartment, he saw the beginnings of something terrifying. Names he recognized. Families he had grown up around. And Liesl's name on more than one transfer file. Meanwhile, Ava Jerome began feeling pressure of her own. With Cody Bell's disappearance still unexplained, murmurs began surfacing. Sonny hadn't directly accused her, but his silence was more damning than his words would have been. Ava tried to shift focus by diving into a new gallery exhibit, but her nerves were raw. The pressure from Liesl, who had sent her a cryptic message about art revealing truth, pushed her deeper into suspicion. Ava knew she had crossed a line with Cody, but she also suspected she had unknowingly been part of something larger. Cody hadn't just betrayed her emotionally. He had been working under Christina's directive, which likely tied back to Liesl as well. As Britt and Jason boarded a flight back to Port Charles, the final phase of their plan took shape. Britt would confront Nina privately with the DNA evidence and the truth. Jason would meet with Sam and Danny to organize protection for Britt and launch an investigation into hospital fraud and identity manipulation. They knew Liesl would strike first, and they needed to control the narrative before she did. Back in town, Christina's name re-entered conversation in a dangerous way. A hidden phone recovered from Cody's locker contained audio recordings. One of them was a conversation between Christina and an unknown man, possibly Pascal, discussing the destruction of DNA records and what she called the Willow Switch. Alexis was given the phone by a retired technician at the phone store who had become suspicious after seeing the Corinthos name on a flagged account. Alexis listened to the recording alone, hands trembling as Christina spoke about how deeply they had all been fooled, how Willow's adoption and sudden connection to Nina was all staged for maximum emotional disruption. Alexis now understood the full weight of what Christina had uncovered. She had likely been silenced for it. And now, Britt returning meant that truth was about to explode. In the final moments, Britt stands in front of Nina on the hospital rooftop. She hands her a folder. Nina opens it, brows furrowed, then looks up at Britt with wide, tear-filled eyes. Britt doesn't say anything at first. She lets Nina read. The silence stretches until Nina's hands begin to shake. "This isn't possible," Nina whispers. "It is," Britt says softly. "It always was. You just weren't allowed to see it." As sirens wail faintly in the distance and the city below buzzes with late-night urgency, a long-buried truth begins to surface. And the woman once thought dead stands at the center of the reckoning, finally ready to reclaim her name.